Hi, my name is Jen. Imagine the following scenario. Your neighbor has had a bunch of people living in their backyard for quite some time. Some seem to have been invited there, while others might be squatting, but it's hard to tell. You and your neighbor are not on the greatest of terms, but you weren't quite prepared for his latest move. One day, the people in his backyard just up and went, and now they are knocking forcefully on your door. "Let us in," they proclaim. "What for? I haven't invited you here. Go away," you respond. "Why does that matter? Your neighbor said that we could crash here," they say. This, my friends, is pretty much how the current diplomatic crisis between Turkey and Greece and the EU is being played out. President of Turkey, Erdogan, is cynically using migrants as leverage to pressure the EU and has been doing so for years. Already in 2016, he was threatening to release a new wave of migrants into the EU, and again in 2019 as a response to the backlash that he received for his attack on the Kurdish part of Syria. Now, he has released the refugees towards a closed and police-enforced border. Greece does not have open borders. What the refugees are doing is illegal. Greece has a right to enforce their borders. They do not have to let them in. What is happening now is an invasion. And I quote, he claims the number of migrants at the Greek border, who include Afghans, Syrian, and Iraqis, were far higher than figures provided by officials and reporters at the scene, saying that hundreds of thousands were already there. And there will be more. Soon, this number will be expressed in millions, he said. Greece says some 10,000 people were barred from entering the country over the weekend. Clashes broke out as police fired tear gas at the refugees, who responded by lobbing rocks. This is nothing less than a threat and should be treated as such. This is an attack. While the mainstream left and the mass media has been on constant coverage of the evil orange man in America, a dictator-like figure has been avoiding their radar. I am not an expert in the geopolitical field, and I don't tend to talk about these topics on my YouTube channel, but one thing that I can bring to the table is to showcase the deranged reaction of this serious situation coming from within my SJW country, Sweden. The Sweden Democrats have been the first and biggest party in parliament to take the issue of migration seriously. Second to them has been the moderates, who in many ways have been walking directly in the Sweden Democrats' footsteps. The moderates released a picture in correlation to the events happening in Turkey, which showcases the party leader Ulf Kristersson in what some would call hunting gear. This picture was paired with the words, "Strengthen the border." This caused an uproar from the left, and instead of standing by their campaign, the moderates took the picture down. The critics of the picture claim that Ulf Kristersson was insinuating that we should shoot the migrants. My thought is that the main critics live in the big cities and don't venture out in the woods that often, where clothes like he was wearing are common for everything from hiking, camping, or just going on adventures. To go hunting is something that a lot of men like to do, especially here in the north, and there is nothing sinister about that. So even if that is hunting gear, I don't see the issue. It's a more relaxed picture of the party leader, which shows a lot more humanity than the one in his political clothes standing with snotty political friends, presumably at a political event. In smaller text on that same picture, there are some words about the migrant crisis in 2015, which has affected the nation heavily to this day. It was a crisis and a problem where politicians failed us greatly. In that sense, it makes sense to me for the party leader to put out a more down-to-earth picture of himself, to distance himself from the political role that he had then, where his party was amongst those who let our nation down. But that's just a little part of my theory. The greatest mistake that the moderates and Ulf Kristersson made was not the picture, but the act of taking it down. This signaled to the leftists that he is weak, and it's also a way of admitting fault. In his own response to the backlash, he says that he wasn't wearing hunting gear, but he was just wearing a normal oil jacket and a cap. And if people want to misconstrue that, then they will. He also stated that the picture was a bad choice, but he doesn't go into why. The leftist response looks like this picture of a spokesperson for CUF, the youth wing of the Center Party of Sweden. The text reads, "Open the borders." The left seems to be stuck in time. They haven't taken note of the chaos that has taken over in Sweden, where entire municipalities are crawling on their knees trying to survive economically, where our elderly are suffering, our healthcare system is starving for resources, unemployment is soaring, and we don't have enough housing, which is causing young adults to live longer with their parents. They have somehow managed to not see the devastating results of the irresponsible immigration policies that we have had thus far. I don't understand how their solution to Turkey's invasion is to bring the migrants here. Even if we were to agree with their idea that the majority of these migrants were well-intentioned refugees, we have evidence to assume that we do not have a workable solution to integrating them into our society as of now. Our solution to war in other countries cannot be to turn this country into yet another hole. The party leader of the Sweden Democrats, Jimmie Åkesson, actually went down to the Greek border. He went there with the intention of seeing what was happening firsthand and to talk to the refugees, to hear their stories, and to tell them that Sweden is full. He was also handing out flyers, which is the only part the Swedish media has chosen to report on. People on the internet, journalists and politicians, were even more furious over this than over the picture from Ulf Kristersson. Here, they started screeching about Jimmie Åkesson not representing them, or the Swedish citizens. This criticism comes from him having signed the flyers with the Sweden Democrats and the citizens of Sweden. Leftists started saying that while Sweden is full, it's only full of racists and of vast forests. The discussion seemed to go back to what it looked like in 2015, where the only concern of leftists was actual area size, not mentioning the need for jobs, healthcare, apartments, education, and so forth. The leader of the tiny in support and huge in media coverage Feminist Party issued a video of her speaking in Arabic. In it, she states that there is a racist party leader at the border spreading falsehoods and that Sweden isn't actually full. How an immigrant party leader with minimal support from Swedish citizens could be speaking for us, but the leader of the current largest party couldn't, is a mystery. But there it is. While on his way home, Jimmie Åkesson was detained at the Turkish airport and held for questioning. He was then told he would not be welcomed back into Turkey for the violation of spreading political flyers without notifying the proper authorities. He was sent home on a later flight than intended and effectively deported, in the words of the Swedish media. Instead of being met by concerns from the Swedish politicians about the authoritarian-like actions made by Turkey, Jimmie Åkesson was met by further ridicule. Anders Lindberg, political editor-in-chief at the largest newspaper in Sweden, calls it poetic justice that Åkesson is deported. A sitting minister for the Social Democrats, Anders Ygeman, tweets ironically that it's too bad that Sweden is full, insinuating that he is not welcome back. The knee-jerk reaction from the left has been to make fun of Åkesson for being, effectively speaking, deported by a, some would say, authoritarian regime. This has been a very odd turn for the otherwise open border welcoming and deportation opposed group. I was very skeptical to the spectacle of Jimmie Åkesson going to the border, as it felt a lot like a political stunt and felt somewhat unfitting for a party leader. This was my honest initial thought. I have since then changed my mind because of the very telling and effective outcome. The left is truly showing their real colors here in Sweden, with demonstrations for bringing all of the refugees and migrants here and standing up more for Turkey than for Greece. Recently, I spoke about the ethnic-motivated crimes against Swedish boys. The Sweden Democrats are now being straightforward enough to talk about the hostility targeted towards Swedes in this country, but the government is unwilling to talk about it honestly. The crisis at the Greek border and now the spreading of coronavirus is getting used to steer the conversation away from these types of issues. They are all pressing issues, don't get me wrong, but be aware of that tactic and be sure to keep gang criminality on the political map for the coming election. And speaking of corona, would it really be such a good idea to let thousands of unvetted people cross through Europe in a disorderly manner? A Europe that is increasingly imposing quarantines and protective measures to stop the spread of the virus. My opinion on the recent events following Erdogan's actions in Turkey pertaining to the reaction of the Swedish media and politicians is that I am in complete disbelief. There have been demonstrations on the streets here where phrases like "Jalla jalla, Sverige åt alla," which means "hurry hurry, Sweden is for everybody" in combined Arabic and Swedish, are being called out, along with other phrases that encourage immigration and multiculturalism. The goal of these demonstrations have been to demonstrate against Jimmie Åkesson's claim that Sweden is full and also to show that refugees are very much welcome. The positive aspects here is that the demonstrations are much smaller than those in 2015, where the Prime Minister even joined in to yell the iconic phrase, "My Europe doesn't build walls." Now, the Social Democrats sing a different tune, but it's not one of remorse or sincerity, but one of begging to be re-elected. They have realized their missteps and will now swing in the way of their voters who are leaving them, but not because they see the devastating effects of their politics on our country, but rather because they care to stay in power. We need to close our borders. We need to show our support for Greece and for Europe. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for watching my video. Be sure to comment what you think and press like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more. Be sure to also press the notification bell if you want to be notified when I release my next videos. If you feel like supporting me and my channel, I do have a Patreon, a PayPal, and a Swish number. My Patreon is the best way you can support me, as there are perks that comes with it, such as the Discord server, and I am also working on getting some bonus videos out on that site. So, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! President Turkey.